Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Week 5 of college football was absolutely insane. 10 top 25 teams went down, including our 8th, 11th, 13th, 14th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 23rd ranked teams. 10 teams lost in week 5 that were in our top 25, which means there were obviously tons of shakeups in our new Gridiron Expert poll. We saw some major risers in the rankings, and we saw six new teams join our top 25 heading into this upcoming weekend. So of course, guys, today we are here to break down our new set of rankings. One that is better than the AP poll, the coaches poll, the playoff poll combined. One that puts more thought and effort into those polls combined. But one that this week's set of rankings was the hardest to make so far this year. But we're here to break down every single team and justify where these teams are ranked as we head in to this next weekend of college football. Before we get started, guys, please, again, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're so glad you could join us today. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country, hitting over 60% of our bets this season and beating out over 80% of the national analysts. So make sure to go take advantage of those guys. We want you, again, to become a part of our GE Nation. All right. Let's take a look at the poll. One I'm sure that everybody down in the comments is going to agree with. But you take a look, guys. I mean, so many shakeups. When you lose, 10 top 25 teams go down and so many teams consecutively go down. I mean, again, our 16th through 20th ranked teams all went down in a row. You're going to see some major rises. You're going to see some major shakeups, and they'll begin to sort themselves out over these next few weeks as well. But we start over here in the top 10 where we have a new number 1 team. Yes, Alabama has reclaimed their spot as the number 1 team in the GE Top 25. Look, guys, I look at this and I say Alabama went on the road and defeated a top 20 team in Arkansas, a team that we had ranked at 18th, beat them 49-26, and they did it for the most part without Bryce Young. Arkansas came back, made it a game late, 28-23 entering the fourth quarter, and then Alabama, their defense stiffened up, their run game came alive, almost 230 yards on the ground alone in the fourth quarter, and they beat a top 20 team on the road by 23 points. Compare that to our previous number 1 in Georgia, who went on the road to face a lowly Missouri team and only won by 4, didn't take the lead till about 4 minutes left in the entire game. Georgia has not looked like the number 1 team in the country the last 2 weeks. It gave them the benefit of the doubt with their unimpressive victory over Kent State in week 4. Nearly lost to Missouri in week 5. They dropped 2 spots. Alabama jumps to 1. Ohio State jumps to 2 with a road win against Rutgers, a home win against Rutgers, conference win, beating them by 39. Georgia drops 2 spots down to 3 with their narrow escape against Missouri, a game they probably should have lost in all honesty. So Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson up a spot to number 4, jumping Michigan. We had the Wolverines at number 4 last week. Michigan now down to number 5. We thought Clemson's win at home against a top 10 team more impressive, beating them by 10, we should add, 30-20. Late NC State touchdown made it look a little bit closer than it was. Thought that was more impressive than Michigan's win over Iowa. Still a good win, 13-point victory at Kinnick Stadium, but obviously Clemson's victory over NC State paired with their victory over Wake Forest last week in week 4 on the road. That, to me, all weighs together more than what Michigan has done the last 2 weeks. Clemson down to number 4, Michigan down to number 5, Oklahoma State jumping Utah for the number 6 spot after their road win at Baylor, beating the Bears by 11. So again, we're putting into the resumes, guys, looking at the ranked versus ranked wins. Utah has been playing really good football. We still think they're a top 10 team. Oklahoma State's victory, though, over a top 20 team, a team we had ranked 11th last week in Baylor. That road win by double digits deserves them to jump Utah, even though the Utes destroyed Oregon State 42-16. So Oklahoma State at 6, Utah at 7, Tennessee up a spot to number 8, didn't even have to play this week. The Volunteers face LSU on the road in week 6. Could have a top 10 showdown against Alabama and Knoxville if they can survive Death Valley. So Tennessee up to number 8, Oregon up to number 9 following their big win over Stanford, and Penn State up 2 spots with an unimpressive victory over Northwestern, beating them 17-7, struggling a bit offensively, but still worthy to me of a top 10 spot. We had the Nittany Lions again at number 12 last week. No one beneath them that I felt that could jump the Nittany Lions. Over here, no one that I felt was worthy to jump the Nittany Lions. And obviously nowhere near Penn State rising higher in the top 10. So James Franklin's squads cracked the top 10 despite a lackluster victory over Northwestern. All right, that's our top 10. A lot of shakeups. No one stayed the same. New number 1, new number 2. Everybody shifted a little bit in our top 10 here. Over in the second column, Ole Miss was one of the biggest risers in our rankings. We were not completely sold on Ole Miss last week, barely escaping Tulsa. Yes, we know they were winning pretty big. Tulsa battled back, made the game look a little bit closer than it was, but only winning by 8 over the Golden Hurricane. Well, now Ole Miss gets a win over Kentucky, who for us was ranked 13th in our rankings last week. They get a home win over them. And when so many teams lost ahead of Ole Miss, again, they were 21st in our rankings. So when they beat Kentucky, who's 13th, and then Baylor, Oklahoma, Washington, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota all lose, Ole Miss is going to shoot up those rankings. They're going to shoot up big time. Ole Miss at number 11, where they belong, in our opinion. Again, a big time win, so they got a quality win, and so many teams lost ahead of them. They moved up the rankings a lot, ahead of a team like USC, who we're still not completely sold on. USC actually rose 3 spots, the most we have risen USC in our rankings so far this year, but they still didn't look that great to me. Beating Arizona State 42-25, it's still a 10-point game midway through the fourth quarter. Again, the defense, still not great. Barely escaped Oregon State in week 4. Beat Arizona State by 17. Yes, a solid win at the Coliseum. We're really going to see what USC is truly made of in week, what would that be, 8? When they take on, or week 7 when they take on Utah. That'll be the true test for us with the Trojans. But still, a top 12 team slowly creeping up into the top 10. NC State in at 13. They dropped 5. Again, they lost to Clemson by 10. I don't think NC State deserved to drop all the way down to 20th or 18th, something like that. They held their own, relatively speaking, on the road in Death Valley, a very tough place to play, a top 10 environment. It was a close, hard-fought battle, and they were holding their own well into that fourth quarter before Clemson really pulled away. Clemson, again, only leading by 7 entering the fourth. So NC State was holding their own. They don't deserve to fall that much. The Wolfpack, to me, are still the real deal. Still dropping 5 spots, though, outside of the top 10, down to number 13, above Wake Forest. Both of these teams lost to Clemson. That's the one thing they have in common. NC State lost to Clemson. Wake Forest lost to Clemson. Obviously, the margin was different. Wake Forest losing in double overtime at home to the Tigers. NC State losing by 10 on the road to the Tigers. I still feel that NC State's resume is just a tad bit better than that of Wake Forest. NC State still holds that big victory over Texas Tech, who, yes, lost to Kansas State, but that, to me, holding a little bit more weight here over Wake Forest, whose best win outside of really anybody was, Vanderbilt and Liberty, who they barely defeated. So I still like NC State here. Wake Forest, yes, of course, has that win over Florida State, which was great. That's why they're actually at all the way to 14th, rising 10 spots. So many teams lost ahead of them, and they beat a top 25 team in our opinion. Florida State was actually 23rd in our ranking. So Wake Forest shooting up those rankings with a win over Florida State on the road. Still think NC State's just a tad bit better. Not much separating them there. Wolfpack, 13th. Demon Deacons, 14th, following their win over Florida State by 10 in Tallahassee. And then Kentucky rounds out our top 15. Kentucky only dropped 2 spots in our rankings. Here's why. Kentucky lost 22-19 at Ole Miss. If you go back and watch that game, Kentucky continued to beat themselves. Kentucky probably should have won that game. Final 3 drives resulted in turnovers, 2 of them resulting in fumbles inside the Ole Miss 20. The Wildcats missed a field goal. They missed 2 extra points. They left 5 points out on the field that didn't even have to do with their offensive drives. Probably should have beat Ole Miss. Not taking anything away from the Rebels, but we did not think Kentucky, who was 13th for us last week, should have dropped from 13th to 20th or 21st, whatever. The Wildcats are still to us a top 15 team. And they proved that, despite the loss, with a very hard-fought loss in Oxford. So dropping a few spots down to 15th, but didn't think they deserved to drop much further. Definitely not below any of the teams we have here. Still think Kentucky's better than the majority of the teams that we have listed below them. So Wildcats in at 15. Mississippi State in at 16. That's a new team. They're unranked. The Bulldogs were unranked last week in our rankings, but look at what the Bulldogs have done now. They beat number 17 Texas A&M 42-24. We had the Aggies ranked 17th as well. Beat them 42-24. Annihilated them in Starkville. Factor in their impressive resume. A win against Memphis, 4-1. A road win at Arizona, who's doing pretty well in the Pac-12 right now. Mississippi State's lone loss was a road game at LSU, who just went on the road and beat Auburn. All right, and LSU's lone loss, a neutral site loss to Florida State, who was ranked last week. So Mississippi State, pretty dang good team. They deserve to be all the way up at 16th, above the likes of TCU, who beat Oklahoma by 31, beat the Sooners 55-24. Again, big win for TCU. Resume not all that impressive outside of the Oklahoma victory. That's why they're not above Mississippi State or any higher, but a very impressive win, nearly putting up 700 yards of offense against Brent Venables' defense. They deserve to be a top 20 team, and they're going to have a top 20 showdown against Kansas. How about the Jayhawks? Kansas, all the way up to number 18, rising 7. Everybody thought their magical run would run out against Iowa State this last weekend. Everybody thought they'd lose to Iowa State on Saturday, and the Jayhawks said, no, we're not going to. Their defense lit them up, held Iowa State to 26 rushing yards, forced 2 turnovers, beat the Cyclones 14-11. Yes, Iowa State missed a lot of field goals. Probably should have won that game, but they didn't. And Kansas continued to prevail. They're 5-0 for the first time since 2009. They're hosting College Game Day against TCU. This is going to be a fun game on Saturday. Kansas up to number 18, but below TCU because of the Horned Frogs' victory over Oklahoma and how they did it in such dominating fashion. BYU up to 19, only rising 3 spots after an unimpressive victory over Utah State, only beating the Aggies by 12. They're still rising up a few, but not enough to jump Kansas, TCU, Mississippi State, even the newcomers. Not enough for BYU to get there. Kansas State up to number 20. They were our first team out last week. The Wildcats were 26th in our rankings, now a top 20 team following their win over Texas Tech. Beat the Red Raiders 37-28. Big win for Chris Klieman. That loss to Tulane, an afterthought, because they beat Oklahoma and then they beat Texas Tech, and the Wildcats, we said, were a sleeper in the Big 12 back in the preseason, proving to be a true contender now heading into Week 6. So big win for Chris Klieman and his squad in at number 20. And then a couple newcomers over here. UCLA in at number 21. They defeated Washington. Their first top 15 victory since 2014. Nearly blew it. They were up 40-16, only won 40-32, but got a quality win at the Rose Bowl over the Huskies. The Bruins are now 5-0 and have a huge showdown against Utah. That will be huge in terms of the Pac-12 standings and kind of seeing the pretenders and the contenders. Some say UCLA should be ranked higher. I disagree. Their resume up until Washington was pitiful. Barely beating South Alabama, a win against like Alabama State, Bowling Green, and Colorado. They had played nobody up until the Washington win. They don't deserve to be in the top 20, right on the outside at 21st. Baylor, they dropped a lot. We had a lot of faith in Baylor. They were 11th in our rankings last week. Might have been a little too high. They fell at home to Oklahoma State 36-25, allowed a safety, allowed a kickoff return for a touchdown, committed a few turnovers. It was just a bad game at home for the Bears. Still a top 25 team, but now kind of probably right where they belong at 22nd. Still should be in there, but 22nd, more about right for Dave Aranda and the Bears, now having 2 losses on the year to both Oklahoma State and BYU. Syracuse is now in our rankings, also at 5-0. They defeated Wagner 59-0. Some say the Orange should be higher. Again, similar to UCLA, their resume not all that impressive. Louisville, Purdue, couple quality wins there, but nothing too fancy for Syracuse. But still, a top 25 team sitting at 5-0. Dino Babers doing a phenomenal job with the Orange. Washington dropping 8 following their loss to UCLA. We had them at 16th. Still think they're a top 25 team, have a decent resume up until this point, but right on the outside of looking in, or right on the outside, or fringe, really, top 25, barely in at 24th. They could fall out, could stay in depending on what happens coming into this next week, but Washington to us with their offense still should be in there, and obviously the fight they put up at the end of the UCLA game keeps them in the game, in the rankings. And then, why not, Washington State at number 25. The 25th spot was always tough for us. We didn't know who to put in. It was Washington State was a contender. Cincinnati was a contender. Some people were saying LSU should be a contender. We're not going to go that far yet. North Carolina not going that far yet. I like Washington State here, a team that really probably should be 5-0. Should have defeated Oregon back in week 4. But the Cougars, guys, playing some good ball. Cameron Ward's the real deal. They just beat California 28-9. They get to play USC on Saturday, and that's going to be a true Pac-12 test as well to see if the Cougars deserve to be in the top 25. Are we right, or should they fall right back out? Maybe one of the bigger tests for USC they've had this year, of course, until they face Utah in Week 7. But that, guys, is our top 25 poll. Again, 10 teams lost in the top 25 in Week 5. 10 teams. We were bound to see some big shakeups. Big risers, big fallers, 6 newcomers we're ready to discuss and debate with you. Leave your rankings, leave your comments, leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's get talking about our GE Top 25 heading into Week 6, another huge weekend of college football, and we're going to have you covered with our analysis of some of the biggest games every step of the way, every single day this upcoming week. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including those expert picks we mentioned over on thegridironexpert.com. Go check those out. Sign up for those today. Some of the best spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national analysts. You do not want to miss out on that offer. Go join and become a part of our GE Nation. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.